Coming up on Locked On Bearcats, why the Bearcats' 2022 football season will be the most important in program history. And I'll start it by asking you all a question and my thoughts on what occurred at the end of the Michigan-Wisconsin men's basketball game this past Sunday. It relates to the Crosstown Shootout Brawl in 2011. Very much so. All of that coming up on Locked On Bearcats.
Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On George Washington's birthday, we thank you very much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you. By the way, I completely apologize for not mentioning that yesterday's episode was brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I finished recording the show and thought, and I was worried I did not include that title sponsor in the show, so hopefully that covers for yesterday. Apologies to anybody associated with the great company of BetOnline. So there was a question. There was a question that was posed by Mo Egger of ESPN 1530 leading up to the Super Bowl. And the question was, and at first I had an obvious answer, but the more I've thought about it, and the more I've thought about it since the Super Bowl, and the more I thought about it yesterday and today, the answer may not be so obvious. And the question was, would you rather have the Bengals be really good, really consistent for 10 to 15 years, or would you rather have them win the Super Bowl this year but then immediately dip back into purgatory and irrelevancy? And at first I'm like, oh, come on, of course I want the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. Everybody should. The more I thought about it, though, irrelevancy and purgatory, when you say those words, you don't like them. And having gone through a 5-year stretch where the Bengals were essentially irrelevant and in purgatory, 30 years without a playoff win, I kind of don't want to go back to that. And it relates to the Bearcats football program. The Bearcats football program had an unbelievably successful season last year, breaking down barriers, as the title of their hardcover book coming out, of their magical 2021 season. They became the first ever Group of 5 team to make the college football playoff. This was a program, though, that had risen from the ashes of college football irrelevancy back in 2016 and 2017. When you're towards the bottom of the American Athletic Conference, that is irrelevant. A, because even if you're at the top of the conference, in most years, the College Football Playoff Committee turns a blind eye at you. And B, when you're at the bottom of a conference like that, you're irrelevant. You're an afterthought. You're just another score that runs along the ticker at the bottom of ESPN every week. I don't want Cincinnati to be like that, especially going to the Big 12. I don't want them to be a Kansas in football or any other low-end Power 5 conference team. What I do want them to be is like Kansas basketball, consistent. If the Bearcats under Luke Fickell, however long he stays here, 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 years, if the Bearcats only win one national championship, that's fine. What you can't do is you can't make the college football playoff last year and then this year, and keep this in mind now. The Bearcats are going into this season without having lost their starting quarterback, running back, wide receiver, both starting corners, and their starting defensive end. And they're also losing a starting linebacker, 2 starting linebackers. So that is 8 key players from last year's team that you're losing. You are getting back your starting tight ends. You are getting back some starting defensive linemen. You're getting back your entire starting offensive line from last year. But the positions I just mentioned, like, you're going into a year where You're coming off of a college football playoff appearance. Now, because the Bearcats still play in a mid-major conference, who knows if they're even still going to be talked about. But you made the college football playoff. And because you're a group of 5 team, you're automatically going to get either A, overlooked, or B, you're going to have your doubters. Because can you do it again? Can you show that last year's playoff was not a fluke? It was not the beneficiary of so many Power 5 teams having down years. Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, who you beat, which essentially knocked them out of the playoff. You were fortunate to have only 2 Power 5 conference champions get in. Georgia got in. They played in the SEC championship game. They were the best team all season. And then Cincinnati is a group of 5 champion. Michigan, the other team, Big Ten champion. But you had so many teams who had down years. If you go 12-0 next year, you're showing that it was not a fluke, and you're maintaining consistency. Consistency is such an overused term, and yet it can't be stated enough. In fact, I think it might be underused. And as I'll tell you in the next segment, I'll give you some teams over the years who maybe, weren't the flashy teams, maybe weren't the biggest name brand teams, but oh boy, were they consistent. And I would much rather be a fan of those teams than be a team that's a flash in the pan and a one-hit wonder. That's who I'd rather be. So the Bearcats next year have to prove that last year was not a fluke and not the beneficiary of the things I just mentioned. Because next year, Clemson could be better. Ohio State could be in the playoff again, back in the Big Ten championship game. Notre Dame could be undefeated next year. Georgia, Alabama will be back. Who knows if maybe LSU too, with Brian Kelly now at the helm. I mean, Texas, USC. What if Oregon, makes a run at the playoff? What if Utah makes a run at the playoff? What if any team in the Power 5 conference who didn't make the playoff last year makes a run at the playoff? Michigan went from unranked to number 2 in the country. You can do that when you are in a Power 5 conference. Cincinnati, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge. But this is not a program that, says, well, we lost 8 key players from last year's team. If we dip to 8-4, so be it. No. Then it's going to be a one-hit wonder. That you don't want that to be a one-hit wonder, the college football playoff berth appearance. You want it to be, a catapult to Cincinnati joining the Big 12, setting themselves up to be the top dogs in the conference like Oklahoma's been for so many years. You want them to be, you want to be that way in basketball, the way Kansas has been for so long. That's what and going back to football, it just can't be a one-hit wonder. Washington made the playoff in 2016. They haven't sniffed it since. Actually, they did. They were good in 2017. But outside of that, they haven't been very good. They did win a Pac-12 championship in 2018, but they weren't even close to even being considered for the college football playoff. Oregon made the playoff in 2014. They've come close since then, but they haven't been back. Michigan State hasn't come close. They were good this year, but they haven't made it back. You look at teams that have made the college football playoff. Other teams like LSU's only made it once. They haven't made it any other year, and they haven't been back since their magical 2019 season. You have to prove that this was not a fluke, and there's more pressure being a group of 5 team. The work is not done. This is a program now that once they especially joined the Big 12, and I think this year, if they're in the running to have an undefeated season once again, which would be their 3rd consecutive undefeated regular season. Would it be? Yeah. 3rd consecutive undefeated regular season, you're going to get talked about. The work's not done. If you go undefeated again every year, there's going to be talk about this program being a college football playoff contender and a national championship contender. That is who the Bearcats are, and that's why it's so important this season to prove that last year was not a fluke and establish a model of consistency, like several other teams and programs have over the years. I'll get to that next here on Locked On Bearcats. But first, I need to tell you about BetOnline.net because football might be over for this season, but basketball's in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you on this February 22nd, Tuesday, George Washington's birthday. I believe it's birthday number 290. Just thought I'd throw that in there. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I believe I already mentioned that, but thought I mentioned it again. Okay, so, model of consistency. Like, I was thinking about this, and this is why the men's basketball season has been so frustrating, because it's a far cry from where you're used to seeing men's basketball in the standings. Over the last 30 years, Bearcats men's basketball has been one of the more consistent programs in the country. 13 AP Top 25 preseason rankings. 6 times they finished in the top 10 in the final AP Top 25. 9 times they were a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, most recently 2018. 12 regular season titles shared or outright, 7 straight from 96 through 2002. One of those, I believe, was just a division title in Conference USA, but still. And then 8 conference tournament championships. This is a program that consistently has done really well in the regular season, has won conference tournaments. They've gotten to the NCAA tournament. I get it. They've only made one Sweet 16 since 2001. And since 1996, when they went to the Elite 8, they've only been to the Sweet 16 twice. I get all of that. But it's better than what this season has been, where you're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. And this applies to the university as well. The University of Cincinnati has uberly good athletic teams. In 2018-2019, you had the football team make a bowl game. You had the Bearcats men's basketball team go to the NCAA tournament. You had women's volleyball go to the NCAA tournament and win a game. You had women's basketball go to the NIT. Baseball qualify for the NCAA tournament. And I believe they were the only school, maybe Michigan as well, to do that, to have those teams. 3 teams go to the NCAA tournament. Women's basketball goes to the NIT and won 3 games. Is it 3? It's 3 or 4 games. Made it all the way to the NIT Elite 8. Gave TCU all they could handle. And then football makes a bowl game at 10-2. Like, there's a lot of universities that don't have that university-wide success in athletics, but UC does. It's because of the way their athletic department is run. They're all about, bringing in high-character athletes. They put a lot of money into their programs. The support from the students is really good. I see so many students at soccer, lacrosse, baseball, women's basketball. It's not just football and men's basketball. And once they join the Big 12, that will only continue to grow. John Cunningham is running a very, very good athletic department right now. I know women's basketball has had their struggles this season, same too with the men's. Women's volleyball has been really good for many years now. And baseball continues to, get better every year, it seems. They've built off of their NCAA tournament. They've only played 1 full season since then, but they had a really, really good season last year. So, Bearcats football, like, you see these teams that win championships over the years. Like, The Philadelphia Eagles won Super Bowl 52, first Super Bowl title in franchise history. And it's a mob scene on Broad Street at the parade. It's unbelievable. So the Eagles win the Super Bowl. What have they done since then? The most games they've won in a season since then, 9. And they've only won one playoff game, and you could argue they got lucky in that game against Chicago. Carson Wentz only started one playoff game after that, and he got hurt in that game, unfortunately. Think about the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series for the first time in 108 years. Yeah, it was cool and all that. They've only won one postseason series since. One. They lost in the wild card game in 2018, missed the playoffs in 2019, got swept by the Marlins in the 3-game wild card series in 2020, and then did not make the playoffs last year. In fact, they sold off most of their team. Another team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, won an NBA title in 2016. Sure, they went back to the NBA Finals the next 2 years, benefited from a weak Eastern Conference, but as soon as LeBron left, they dipped into irrelevancy. What I want my teams to be is, yes, the Bearcats made the college football playoff last season, but they have been building and building and building for that for years. Like the Atlanta Braves. So having lived in Macon now for over a week, I've noticed that the Braves are the dominant team when it comes to what I see fans, what gear I see people wearing when it comes to sports. The Atlanta Braves rule Atlanta. The Braves won 14 straight division titles, but they only won one World Series. And there can be any critic out there that says, well, what good does 14 division titles do if you only win one World Series? It does a lot. The first goal of every season for every team in professional sports should be to win its division. Now, NBA might be a little different. I'm not sure how much meaning there is in division titles. Same too with NHL, but because there's so many teams to make the playoffs. But in the NFL, where there's still a limited amount of teams to make the playoffs, and you win your division, you get a home playoff game. And in Major League Baseball, you win your division, you don't have to play in the one-game playoff, the wild card game. There's benefits of that. So the Braves won 14 straight division titles. That's a model of consistency. That means my team is relevant every single season. My team is going to have a chance to win a championship, a World Series, a Super Bowl every year. The San Francisco Giants won 3 World Series in 5 years. The years they didn't win the World Series, missed the playoffs. 2010, they won the World Series. 2011, missed the playoffs, collapsed down the stretch. 2012, I know Reds fans won't like me hearing this, and I don't like mentioning this. Giants win the World Series. 2013, terrible. 2014, won the World Series. 2015, dipped back into irrelevancy. 2016, made the playoffs. 17, 18, 19, 20, missed the playoffs. 2021, they made the playoffs, lost in the division series. I would rather have my team. Think about Villanova. They won 2 national championships in 2016 and 2018. But 2015, 14, 2017, 2019, they lost in the second round. It's championship or bust. You hate that because then that adds more pressure. If the Cincinnati Bengals, for the next 10 to 15 years, only win one Super Bowl, but get to 3 or 4 and get to the playoffs every year, win a playoff game in every year, but maybe 2 or 3, I would take that. If Joe Burrow only wins one Super Bowl, fine, because I know how hard it is to win a Super Bowl. Not every quarterback is going to be Tom Brady or Terry Bradshaw or Joe Montana or any quarterback who's won multiple championships. A ridiculous level that Brady, Bradshaw, and Montana have won at. There was a question asked on Twitter, if Joe Burrow has Matt Ryan's career, 4-6 in the playoffs, a Super Bowl appearance, would you take that? I said yes. Because when you're irrelevant for so long, you want to be relevant. Now, obviously, you want to win a championship. And there will be people who say, oh, come on, you're not having high enough expectations. Yes, I am. Because you know how the saying, you remember your worst loss more than your most memorable win? Well, you remember irrelevancy more than you remember your highs. And having gone through periods where the Bengals were irrelevant or they were teasers and sarcasm where, well, we might win a playoff game this year, but they didn't. So that's where I'm at. I want the Bearcats to be like the Braves. Yeah, the Braves lost in the division series the last 4 years. They won the division title. Still won 14 straight division titles. They achieved the first goal of every season, and that was to win their division. When I managed varsity basketball in high school, one of the goals that a player on the team came up with was win the first tournament game. And that season, we went in, we had high expectations. We thought we were going to be really good, high scoring. We were going to have a really good regular season, get a really good seed in the conference tournament, or the state tournament rather. We were going to, win a district. We were going to do all these great things. And the first goal was win the first tournament game. And our head coach really liked that because he said, we can have all these high expectations, but if we don't win the first tournament game, you got to win the first tournament game to have the opportunities to play for championships beyond that. Like the Denver Nuggets, the years where Carmelo Anthony was there, they had these really good teams year in and year out. Do you know how many times in 7 years they made it out of the first round of the playoffs? One time. And then after Carmelo Anthony was traded, they made it back in 2011, back in 2012, back in 2013. All 3 years, first round. Now, recently, they've been better in the playoffs. They've gone to the second round of the playoffs each of the last 3 years. Remains to be seen what they do this year with Nikola Jokic. But I just think about, the Kansas Jayhawks. 14 straight regular season titles. The first goal of every college basketball program in a Power 5 conference should be to win its regular season title. Conference tournaments do mean something at the Power 5 level, but a regular season title, a 4-month grind through the season, 2 months of conference play where everybody knows each other so well, it's a matter of who does the little things better, that's significant. I want the Bearcats to just be a model of consistency. Like the San Antonio Spurs. Tim Duncan played 19 seasons. 15 times, they made it out of the first round of the playoffs. You can say, congratulations. Yeah. Like, they made it out of the first round of the playoffs. They won at least a playoff series every 15 out of 19 times. I take pride in that. And they may not have had Shaq or Kobe or Michael or LeBron. They may not have been a flashy team. They still won 5 championships in a span of 16 years. That means something. It should mean something. Here's consistency. The Spurs lost 62 games the year before Tim Duncan was drafted. His first season, his rookie season, they were in the conference semifinals. 50-plus wins for 17 straight years. It's hard to do. We like flashiness. We like champions. What we overlook is teams who are really consistent, like the Braves, the Spurs, the Kansas Jayhawks, and 14 straight regular season titles. That's hard to do, and I get it. They only made the Final Four 3 times. 5 times they didn't make it out of the first weekend. They only won 1 national championship, blah, 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 blah. 14 straight regular season titles. You give yourselves a chance every year. Eventually, you're going to break through with 1. The Braves did with 1 World Series title. The Spurs did with 5 titles. I want the Bearcats every year in football to be competing for a conference championship. And then if they get to the playoff, they will win a national championship eventually. I want Bearcats men's basketball, once they get, their footing back, I want them to compete for a regular season title every year. Conference tournament, I'd like them to win it too, but regular season title will mean more in the Big 12 than a conference tournament. And then, whatever happens in the NCAA tournament happens. I want the Bengals every year to win the AFC North. If you do that, you never know where that can take you. The Bengals won the AFC North. They got a favorable matchup in the wildcard round, and then they got another favorable matchup in the divisional round, and then they beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. Boom, they're playing for a Super Bowl championship. I choose consistency with the Bearcats. If they go 10-2 next year, good. With the loss of talent that they had, if they're 11-1 next year, hey, you only lose 1 more game with the talent you lost. That's great, man. That's great. Get back to a New Year's Six bowl. Consistency. 3 straight New Year's Six bowl trips, and you were in position in 2019 to make it 4. That's what I want to see. That is what I want most from this program and the Bearcats. It's why it's been so frustrating this season for men's basketball. Like, we're not used to them just being just bad. Like, in the depths of irrelevancy in a mid-major conference. You know, the Bearcats are on pace to finish their worst in a conference since 2011. They haven't played 4 games in an NCAA tournament, or a conference tournament, since 2013. We harp on them for not getting far in the NCAA tournament, but we don't appreciate consistency. I'm going to start to do that. I'm going to start to appreciate consistency, and that my teams every year are going to have a shot at winning a national championship because they won their conference regular season, they won their division, they won a championship, whatever. I'm going to appreciate the Bengals winning division titles. And so long as they win playoff games most years, there might be a year where they lose their first playoff game. You know, if the Bengals make the playoffs for the next 13 years straight, I might be asking a little much, but let's say they make the playoffs. Let's say Joe Burrow plays 17 years, and the Bengals make the playoffs 14 times, and only twice they lose in the first, and they only lose their first playoff game. I'm taking that. And if they win a championship, I will definitely take that. Winning a championship takes a lot of luck. Like, going to the Super Bowl was great. But there are so many things that have to happen in a Super Bowl. There's so many things that have to go your way to win. And it didn't happen for the Bengals. It's fine. They weren't supposed to be in the Super Bowl, and they were. I will take consistency. Because in sports, the worst, you remember it more than you remember it the best. And you don't want to feel that way again. Up next, to round out the show, my thoughts on what happened at the end of the Michigan-Wisconsin men's basketball game on Sunday. Inexcusable. Reminded me very much of the Crosstown Shootout Brawl back in 2011. I'll touch on that next here on Locked On Bearcats. But first, I need to tell you about Rock Auto. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for you and your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, and even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from the chain store. From Rock Auto, just $216. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They have everything you can need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. For example, they encourage me to discover the car part needs, discover how Rock Auto can help and share with your listeners. So that being you. So I'm going to help you discover your own car part needs, discover how Rock Auto can help. Go to rockauto.com now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we send you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you on this George Washington's birthday, February 22nd of 2022. So, Michigan-Wisconsin, the basketball game on Sunday. Look, if you didn't watch it, Wisconsin won the game 77-63. At the end of the game, Michigan head coach Juwan Howard confronted Wisconsin head coach Greg Gard. Greg Gard had called a timeout as Michigan was pressing. Greg Gard called a timeout so he could help strategize with his team to break the press. Juwan Howard took exception to that, and he confronted Greg Gard at the handshake line. There was a lot of touching. There was a lot of fist fighting, if you will. I shouldn't say fist fighting. There's physical contact being made, light physical contact, and then Juwan Howard took his right hand and punched a Wisconsin assistant coach, Joe Habencroft. And it remains to be seen at the time of this recording, there had not been any suspensions handed down, no fines against Howard or the university, no word. Well, there was a word. Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel came out with a statement, and it's just sad what happened. There's no excuse for it. John Rothstein said it best. A head coach is a symbol for a program and its university. There is no place for that at any level of sport. And John Rothstein he's this fun follow on Twitter with his sayings. He's got slogans for certain coaches and schools. Buy stock now, the future. You should have bought stock a long time ago. Juwan Howard's got one, the Fab Vibe. Of course, Juwan Howard played on the Fab Five in Michigan back in the 90s, early 90s. But there is no place in our game or any sport for doing what Juwan Howard just did. He's the head coach. And I've said on this show before, the head coach of a university is to be a symbol. And I have said it, the head coach is the face of a program. College football and college basketball programs are driven by the head coach. The players ultimately are on the court or field, help the team and program win games, but it's ultimately the head coach. Players come and go. The face of a program is the head coach. It's not like in the NFL where the face is a player. Joe Burrow is the face of the Bengals. Luke Fickell's is the face of the Bearcats football program. Wes Miller hopefully will be the face of the men's basketball program. Juwan Howard is the face of the men's basketball program in Michigan. And it's sad because I remember when Juwan Howard took over as head coach in the summer of 2019. He got very emotional in his introductory press conference. How much it meant to him that he was coaching at his alma mater. You know, a place where he was a legend at. He was a big part of one of the best college basketball teams in the last 30 years. You know, that meant a lot to him. That he was going back to his alma mater to be the head coach. And I remember this year where, Juwan Howard was, a hype man leading up to the Ohio State-Michigan game. And he said he was going to lose his voice at the game. And he rushed the field with the students after the game. And he went and embraced Jim Harbaugh. So it's just really sad because when something like this happens, one stupid mistake can change your whole identity. Tom Brenneman, we all know what happened with him. He said something that he should not have said on air. A derogatory remark on air. And I know there was some polarity with him before that. I happen to like Tom Brenneman. Marty was fantastic, and Tom was too. Tom Brenneman's perception in this city and on a national level changed like that. You make one stupid mistake. One. And it sucks that society is this way. But damn it, I understand it. One stupid mistake, your whole identity can be changed. If I'm a player, if I'm Hunter Dickinson, for instance, on Michigan, do I really want to play for that coach now? I get it. I'll give you an example. I'm at the Mercer baseball game yesterday. The Eastern Kentucky head coach. Mercer was playing Eastern Kentucky. I'm at the game yesterday, and Eastern Kentucky's head coach is arguing with an umpire. But there was no physical contact made. There was just, he was taking his stance. The players were clapping for him. They were jumping out of their dugout. They were rallying behind them. I want a head coach. And this is basically saying what I want my program to be, consistent. And I want my program's head coach to be, I want them to defend my players. I want them to, mold players into young men. I want them to stand up for the players. I'm kind of repeating myself. That's what I want. I wanted my head coach to be a great leader. I want them to lead by example. I want them to stand up for my players. I want them to put the players in the best position to win and succeed on and off the court. I am all about those things. What I am not about is what Juwan Howard did yesterday. If I'm Hunter Dickinson, do I want to play for a coach who does that? I want to play for a head coach who politely, my grandfather said it best to me, politely forward. You want to be politely forward to anyone. And I have made this mistake before, and I regret it, or wish I hadn't. I've learned my lessons. I am politely forward now with anyone I come across, or I strive to be that way. That is who I want my head coach to be. If he has an issue with something, he does not. He confronts him in an assertive way, not aggressive, assertive. If I'm Ward Manuel, or if I'm the AD of Michigan and Juwan Howard did what he did yesterday, I'm firing him immediately. I'm sorry. I will not have a head coach roam the sidelines in my arena or for my team, knowing he did what he just did. And it sucks that society is like that. You make one mistake, you're gone. But damn it, perception is reality. At the University of Michigan, which, they've been in the news for some reasons that aren't so good, but they're also a very, very good school and institution. They're very good academically. One of my grandparents' best friends, this couple, the husband has his name on one of the entrances to the medical building. The University of Michigan has a place within my family. It means a lot to my uncle, and it means a lot for those who go there. Hail to the victors. There is tremendous pride through that university. If I'm a Wolverine fan today, if I'm a student, alum, a fan, a booster, do I really want Juwan Howard to be the head coach of my team? How can you justify only suspending him 2 games? If you're not going to fire him, at least suspend him for the rest of the season. Period. So remember Yancy Gates? Yes, you do. You remember Yancy Gates. Yancy Gates in 2011, the Crosstown Shootout Brawl. It was bad. Gates was suspended 6 games. Or, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how many games he was. I don't remember how many games he was suspended. But he was forced to apologize. He did. He ended up being a really important player in the Bearcats' run in the Sweet 16 that year. I mean, now, when you're a player, because players come and go, and they're not faces of a program like a head coach is, you can recover from that. You can still play because you're ultimately the one helping your team and program win games. And that's why Yancy Gates still ended up playing the rest of that season. But a head coach should not be doing that. There was a sports talk show host in Nashville, Caroline Fenton's co-host, who I had on Locked On LSU, who I had on the show a few weeks ago. Her co-host, Jarrett Stillman, who makes a lot of great points, articulates his points well, took to Twitter, and he said, this is a terrible look for Michigan basketball. Yes, for a program that has a lot of history, for a university that's widely acclaimed for a lot of great things. Their perception just got tarnished by one stupid act. I get it. I want my head coach to stand up for my players, but I don't want him doing that. He should be fired immediately. I would have gone down to the locker room after the game, and I would have made him book his own flight back home to Ann Arbor. I'm dead serious on that. Because if I'm an AD, I run my program with the utmost morals and ethics possible, not what Juwan Howard did. It's different if you're a player like Yancy Gates in the Crosstown Shootout Brawl. Players ultimately help the team win games. You can punish a player by suspending him internally, or whether or not the NCAA comes down and suspends him himself. You can punish a player doing that and then let him come back. But he ultimately helps your program win games. I don't like what Yancy Gates did. It was a terrible look for the Bearcats at the time. But he was going to help the Bearcats win games. It was his senior year. I would have let him come back. But what Juwan Howard did as the head coach, one of the most notable Wolverines in school history, especially when it comes to athletics, what he just did, his reputation changed forever. Sorry. Myles Garrett against Pittsburgh 2 years ago, he can do whatever. He can have the most outstanding career for any defensive end in the history of the NFL. You know what fans won't forget? Was that one night where he swung his helmet at Mason Rudolph. At least I won't. It's unfortunate that that's what society is today. But Juwan Howard, unlike Yancy Gates, should never coach a game for Michigan again. And that might be an extreme take. And that might be a take that is widely criticized. But that is how I would run my program as an AD. And I would not even let Juwan Howard yesterday come back on the team plane. And if I'm a player, I would not stand for that. If I'm a player and find out my head coach does not get suspended, I opt out the rest of the season, and then I enter the transfer portal. Unless a new head coach is in place. I'm dead serious about that. That will do it for me here on Locked On Bearcats for Tuesday. Plenty to get to still the rest of the week. Bob Huggins is a finalist for the Basketball Hall of Fame. I'll state my case as to why he should be in the Hall of Fame. Tomorrow and later on this week, more on football. The Combine approaching. The NFL Draft right around the corner. Hard to believe. Men's basketball's got a crucial game tomorrow. You know, the silver lining with being towards the bottom of the conference is bid stealers could be a bid stealer. We saw it last year at Georgetown and Oregon State. Maybe the Bearcats are that this year. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's, NNATI. You can also follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, and email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. As always, you can check out Locked On Bearcats on our YouTube channel, Locked On Bearcats. Like, subscribe, comment. Helps more listeners like you find this podcast and helps grow the show. We'll be back tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow. And until I talk to you then, have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats. Have a great day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.